from PRX.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and friends beyond the binary, it's time for the podcaster who's a bit like an oral nightcap. Usually there's like a night, I guess like there's oral nightcaps. That's what I meant to say. Oral nightcap, that's a regular nightcap you would like tea or drink. And I don't know what would be the word equivalent for your head. That would rhyme with those, but either way, this is the podcast. You can put it on your head, kind of, or you can't. Like it's just for external use only, kind of. Those sound vibrations do travel. Anyway, but guess what? It's time for Sleep With Me podcast. Puts you to sleep, and that's it. Let's keep the show going.
This show is supported by Odoo. When you buy business software from lots of vendors, the costs add up and it gets complicated and confusing. Odoo solves this. It's a single company that sells a suite of enterprise apps that handles everything from accounting to inventory to sales. Odoo is all connected on a single platform in a simple and affordable way. You can save money without missing out on the features you need. Check out Odoo at odoo.com. That's odoo.com.
All right, everybody, it's time to talk about tonight's sponsor, Helix Sleep, and they've got some amazing deals coming up. You're going to hear about it at the end of this ad read, so do not miss out. I want you to right now to open up your phone. Just do it with me. I'm going to go to helixsleep.com/sleep, and if I were you, I wouldn't want to, I don't know what your relationship with your bed is right now. I've had a long-term relationship with my Helix mattress. It fits my needs, how I sleep. I sleep on my side, I sleep on my stomach, but now I'm sleeping more on my back, and I'm relocating, and unfortunately, I'm not in a position where I could ship my mattress because I have to move my stuff before I move. But that's okay. It means I get a new Helix, so I'm going to take the Helix quiz right now, helixsleep.com/sleep. 30 seconds, and you give, one or two sleepers. One. Okay, let me put in my email. Put in my name here, give a little bit of information. Okay, what size mattress am I considering? I got that down. All right. I don't know if are you taking this quiz with me at helixsleep.com/sleep? All right, toss. I guess I toss and turn. So I'm going to pick toss and turn. And what kind of firmness? Okay, I'm going to pick my firmness that fits my needs. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to get yours, Okay, I'm going to talk about my back there, talk about temperature. All right, I got matched with my mattress. Oh, boy, and it's a different one than I have now just because I made a couple changes to how I sleep. So I'm going to check this out and think about it for my next Helix I'm going to be sleeping in. So take that Helix quiz. It's going to be coming right to your door, but most of all, it'll be a mattress that fits you, your needs, and how you sleep. And the best news is that Helix has amazing deals for Sleep With Me listeners, but only if you use our link. So all you need to do is go to helixsleep.com/sleep for Labor Day early access and get 20% off site-wide. That's helixsleep.com/sleep for 20% off site-wide. Make sure you enter our show name after checkout so they know we sent you. helixsleep.com/sleep. Thanks, everybody. All right, this is Scoots reading through referrals of people that supported the show. Super listeners just like you that supported the show. If any of this resonates with you, you might be the person I'm trying to get a hold of. And honestly, if you're listening to me and hearing me right now, I am not talking to anybody else. It is rare for super listeners to be listening and hearing me. But like those are the people whose minds I'm trying to change, not people that have already decided not to support the show. Then maybe listen to what Taylor had to say. Thanks. Taylor said, I'm an adult in my late 20s, early 30s. I go through brief periods of insomnia that last a month. Like many mentioned in the intro, I tried Sleep With Me on a friend's recommendation and bounced off of it. It wasn't until a few years later where I was really struggling to find something to help me sleep. I tried it again and worked. Personally, I found the ads distracting, so I decided to try out the ad-free ones by supporting the show, and this version worked perfectly for me. The monthly cost is small compared to the benefit I get from the show. There wasn't anything that's specific that kept me from supporting the show. But Taylor, just to paraphrase, Taylor did start falling asleep during the intros. So obviously, like instead of winding down during the intros, the ad spots would wake Taylor up. I was a little skeptical that the ad-free would help and planned only to try it for a few months to see if it helped. And, well, it's been a few years. Because I found the show helpful, I do feel good about supporting the podcast so it can help other people. And, yeah, thanks so much for supporting the show, Taylor. If you're still listening and hearing from me, you relate to what Taylor says. You are a super listener. I'd love it if you could consider supporting the show on Sleep With Me Plus, because I hope you're that one person I'm trying to get a hold of out of those 19 people, so we can be here for you and everybody else long into the future. You could do that at sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. Thanks. Mystery Bard, a lot of people help out on the show. Who are they?
This posty poster son sounds like an earful. Wrote the theme song. Edits episodes. Carl W. the legend. Also edits episodes. Ashley, Kenny, Scotty, Jennifer. Runner. Eric and the team at Astound are on the website. I am the mystery bard. I do the lullabies, yeah. I do commissions at jonathanmann.net. I'll write a song for you. Any reason at all. You can tell me the story and I'll make it personal. You see the kindness shine straight on through when the listeners form their own Facebook group. Keith, Stacy, Sarah, Julie, and Jennifer. These are your moderators. Get support dear Scooter on Patreon. Buy the merch and support the sponsors. You can find anything you want at sleepwithmepodcast.com. And we're so proud that we could dance. Rusty Biscuit, Lois, Anna like banana. Leah does the transcripts.
Thanks, Mystery Bard. Oh, and hey, if you're listening to this, you know, the referral program, if you're not in a position to financially support the show, is a huge way to support the show and get free access to Sleep With Me Plus. That's at sleepwithmepodcast.com/refer. But there's also a tiny way anybody can help out the show. It's free. It helps out the show a little bit. And that's following the podcast wherever you listen to it, or commenting if you listen on Spotify or YouTube. It really helps other people discover the show, helps you stay up to date on the latest episodes. And only 50% of people follow or subscribe. It's free to follow or subscribe in podcast apps. So if you do that, it just gives it helps people discover the show, and it helps you stay up to date on the show. So follow or subscribe in your podcast app. That'll help out the show a little bit. Not necessarily keep us going forever, but I'd appreciate it. And while you're at it, go ahead and follow Bedtime Stories from Sleep With Me. That's in every podcast app, too. That has a story-only episodes that'll add it to your sleepy repertoire. Thanks, and what do you say we get on with the show? Hey, only tossing, turning, mind racing, trouble getting to sleep, trouble staying asleep. Well, welcome to Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. We do it a bedtime story. All you need to do is get in bed, turn out the lights, and press play. I'm going to do the rest. And what we're going to attempt to do is create a safe place where you can set aside whatever's keeping you awake, whether it's thoughts, feelings, physical sensations, work stuff, non-work stuff, whatever, like buzzing streetlights. I haven't mentioned that in a while, but every once in a while that'll get my goose meat. Maybe we'll talk about that. I'm always looking for a cheap metaphor. I don't know if that is a cheap metaphor. Because that is an interesting phrase. But here's the thing. I'm going to try to take your mind off whatever's giving you away. I'm going to send my voice across the deep, dark night. I'm going to use lulling, soothing, creaky, dulcet tones, pointless meanders, tangents. I'll get distracted. I'll go off topic. A lot of circular and ovular and figure eight. My logic's a figure eight. And what you say, was that a figure eight or an infinity? And I'd say, well, it's like a smushed figure eight, but it's not totally on its side. Also, at some point, I got to twist it. Could you help me twist this figure eight back? Because it kind of got twisted into where it's more like a figure L, like a figure late, like an L8. I guess that would be it. Yeah, that's my logic. That's the sign for Scoot's logic equals a figure late. It's infinitely senseless. I know that much. So anyway, if you're new here, here's this podcast. I'm going to try to create a safe place, as I said, where you can feel welcome, treated with dignity and respect, and ideally carried off into dreamland. Here's like the structure of the show. The first 4 minutes, ideally 4 minutes or less at this point, is what we're always shooting for, of business, and that includes like a little jokey opening and all the credits and how we keep the show in the archives free, either sponsors or listener support. So it's the first few minutes of the show. Then we have an intro, which is about 12 minutes of me trying to get your goose, like your sleep goose, your goose down or your artificial goose down. And was that a Beastie Boys album, Goose Down? Or maybe that was a song, I'm going to get your goose down. Maybe not, no one's responding, even in my brain, it's crickets. But here's, okay, so there's an intro, it's 12 minutes, you can skip it. It's not like really an informative intro, it's a friendly intro where I try to set the stage for the podcast. If you want to skip ahead to the story, that's right in the show notes, or you can listen. Like some people fall asleep during the intro, some people get ready for bed, and there's no wrong way to use this podcast because you don't really need to listen to it. You could just barely listen or be aware. You could turn it way down, whatever volume works for you. You don't have to pay very much attention to me, just as much attention as you feel like granting me. But ideally, I'm taking your mind off whatever's keeping you awake, and then you drift off to sleep. This podcast doesn't so much put you to sleep, but to keep you company in the deep, dark night while you fall asleep. And why do I make this podcast? Well, because the sleep has gotten my goose more times than one, where I say, what the heck, why, like, just like I say, what the heck does get my goose mean? Well, also, my part of my questioning brain says, what the heck, Scoots? Are you sure that's a phrase, getting my goose? And I say, well, I'm sure it's not getting my gander. Maybe in 1840 it was getting my gander. But I don't know my goose from my gander anyway. But the reason I make the podcast is because I've been there, tossing and turning and not being able to sleep. Recently and in the past as a kid, chronically. But like, yeah, what does get my goose mean? They say that one really gets my goose, but it always seems like it's like it gets my tissel in a bissel, or what do they say? Gets my bissel in a knot or something. I don't know what that phrase is. Like I said, it gets my thistles in a knot or something. I guess that's not a phrase. That should be, like, if you knot thistles, wear a thumb guard or whatever the heck they're called, a thimble. But when they say really gets my goose, I think it's like it really irritates me, right? Like that person really presses my buttons. Or is it good? Like, oh, it gives me the good kind of shivers. That really gets my goose. I think it's the first one. So why would getting someone's goose, I guess if you got someone's goose, that'd be irritating. You'd go outside and you'd say, Reggie, where's Reggie, my goose? Wait, is goose male or female? Like, in a gander is like, or are they just different species? Have a gander in my goose. Like, that could mean anything. Oh boy. But it really gets my goose. Like, if you take someone's goose, that's wrong. So don't do it. But I think you'd have more than mild irritation if you owned a goose at any time, I think, in human history. That would either be a sign you're very well off, or your goose is like really important. Like whether it's laying golden eggs, or it's your best friend, or like your family has a pillow farm. I mean, there's got to be pillow farms, right, somewhere, or something. Or like you use, the goose is part of your family's business, or maybe your future sustenance for your family. Getting your goose, for the most part, would be more than irritating, unless you're even, especially if you're like super rich. you'd say, Jeeves, how many geese do you see out there, Jeeves? Well, sir, I believe I see 144 geese, as you always have had. Well, that's where you'd be wrong, Jeeves, because there's 143 geese out there. And I want you to go and count the geese as punishment and return to me and confirm there are 143 geese out there. And one of my geese is missing. There's not a day go by that I don't know how many geese are in my field. Also, make sure my bowl has 22 raspberries in it this morning, Jeeves. And once you count those geese, we will need to find who's gotten my goose and deal with it. So you see, even like someone like that's going to be like, it's still going to be more than mildly irritating. I don't think there's any situation, again, in human history, I mean, where you lose a goose and you just shrug your shoulders. I mean, unless that's your goose's personality, like Donnie, the goose that always runs away. Maybe that'll be in Gingerbread Press 2059. Gingerbread Children's Press, Donnie, the goose that always runs away. But, really, like, I think, like, I don't know, I can't think of anyone, and I mean, let's not even get into swans, holy moly. So why would getting your goose, I mean, I guess I'll Google this after it, I mean, I guess, like, maybe it means, like, getting on your goose's nerves, because then a goose, usually if you get on a goose's nerves, it's going to make a noise, which gets on everyone else's nerves. And I do know that Canadian geese, or Canada geese, I guess, correct myself now that I've been informed, that they're Canada geese, they can be a little bit, opinionated, we'll say. When I'm running, I used to have to run at one of my old jobs around this, whatever drainage basin. That was a city park, and the geese never liked to see me. Even though I'd say, hey, you stay over there, I'll stay over here, they'd still express their opinion about my running. And they say, believe me, I don't like running either. I just, it's like a thing I do. So maybe that's it. It's just a goose is a stand-in for the irritated party. Because if your goose is really gotten, you'd be more than mildly irritated. I mean, I guess we all can agree on that. Even the geese can. I mean, unless you're a country named Canada and you want to come get all your geese, because believe me, I've done podcast episodes about it already. Please come get your geese and take them all back. And I know it's our fault. It's definitely our fault in the U.S. I totally will sign off on the apology. And you say, well, they're your geese. Technically, they're just called Canada geese. I say, please just take them back. Can't you take them back anyway? You got all that territory up there. How about Thunder Bay? The geese, like, how about the great geese flocks at Thunder Bay? Like, just, can you take them back, please? So I don't think we've come to a conclusive answer, except, like, geese are irritable, and so that could be it. But that's what these intros are, I guess. It's like, and it can be irritable when you can't sleep, and that's where I come in. And I will posit, like, you probably ideally didn't think about whatever's keeping you awake while I was on my geese tangent. And it kind of is a litmus test. Say, is this podcast for me? Like, if you were trying to make sense of what I was talking, this podcast is a little bit goofy, but it's good-natured, because all I want to do is help you fall asleep. And it doesn't work for everybody. I wish it did. But I do hope it works for you, and give it a few tries. Most reviewers on iTunes or Apple Podcasts say, geez, it took 2 or 3 times until I got that this podcast doesn't make any sense, and it's a bit ridiculous, and then it started helping me fall asleep. So give it a few tries. If it doesn't work for you, I'm sorry. I really appreciate your time, and I'm glad you're here, because I work very hard. And I strive, and I yearn to help you fall asleep. Thank you. Thanks again for coming by. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our newest series as I record this, yet unnamed. But by the time you listen, I'll probably have a name for the series. But it's episodic, though it does have, Well, it's episodic. You can listen to it in any order, and it is a grounded series, but the way I'm delivering it is, I guess, we'll see how surreal it is. So I really don't want to do any setup of the story or the characters, but I do want to do some sort of transition, to help you ease into it and stay asleep or drift to sleep at your leisure. And so for this episode, I'm going to use an entry from Wikipedia as a transition, which will do some set place setting if you're listening start to finish, or if you're drifting off, it should help too. So I'll be quoting and paraphrasing from a Wikipedia article titled Pretzel Amusement Ride Company, which was a famous manufacturer of pretzel dark rides. They built over 1,400 pretzel rides and sold them to carnivals and parks. The pretzel ride was invented by Marvin Rempfer. Leon Cassidy was Marvin's partner in the Pretzel Ride Amusement Company, and both names are on the patent. Leon Cassidy patented the single-rail dark ride in 1928 along with Marvin Rempfer. And the company originated in Tumbling Dam Park on the banks of Sunset Lake in Bridgeton, New Jersey. A rider said, "I felt like I was twisted and turned like a pretzel, and so the name Pretzel was chosen. A large, heavy pretzel design was originally fixed to the front of each car to prevent the car from tipping back. In 1929, a standard pretzel ride had 5 cars, 300 feet of track, and was 1.5 minutes per ride, and sold presumably wholesale for $1,200. Portable rides weighed about 9 tons and, were moved by big vans. For a while, they were single stories, but in the late 50s, they started making double-decker 2-story rides. Leon Cassidy was not a fan of the double-decker. He was wrong, though, of course. There was a ride called the Mad Giant, which weighed 17 tons and took 5 hours to set up. Pretzel also made spinning rides, including one for Coney Island. Many of the rides were themed. A few were Pretzel Ride, the Caveman Casper House, Lost Mind, Gold Nugget, Thunderbird, Junior Ride, Toonerville Trolley, Whirlo, Kitty Circus, Pirates Cove, or other names, Winter Wonderland, Laugh in the Dark with spinning cars, Laughland, Pirates Cave, Pirates Den, Paris After Dark, Casper's Funland, Treasure Island, Big Farm-A-Rama, Lake Cachot, Safari, Zoomerang, and one of them, which is in Pennsylvania, was built in 1927 and was the oldest dark ride until it was lost in 2004. And there are some, including one at Sylvan Beach, which I didn't know about, so I'll be going there this summer for sure to check that out. Conanut Lake Park adds one, Camden Park, and there's also this website called Laugh Something, which I'll try to link to, that has a lot of stuff. So that is the history of the pretzel ride. When you first came to me, you were already strong and focused after spending seemingly a long time in the Teenage Ninja Adventures. You were still little, but you were hard on the outside. But on the inside, you were a bit like me. Yeah, but different in some ways, since I was relegated to the classic section of the park that had closed down long before the park did. And it was a place we restored or used when we were needed. In fact, before things changed, they had taken out the second half of my attraction and were going to refurbish me for the Halloween fun times at the park. So here I sit, a pretzel dark ride without darkness right now, or when you arrived during the day. My roof exposed to the sky. My insides barren mostly of attractions and almost empty, covered over, but really exposed, because the reality was I didn't ever have any real depth other than the psychedelic tunnel. I was just curtains and turns. But then I was tasked with helping you. I knew the caretaker had already started working on my mechanics, but I wasn't sure why or what I could offer you. You came to me, and I'm just a shell. I'd always been just a shell to fill up with little things. An empty, hollow pretzel with, like the guests would eat, but without any cheese on the inside. That's what I meant. Maybe you were a bit like that too, hard on the outside. I thought to the caretaker, why bother fixing me up? I'm old, I've been retired, and my shot at refurbishment is gone. I'd heard of you. The caretaker would talk with pride in their eyes, talking about you, and I heard others speak of you. And I knew some of the mammals that took up residence inside me in place of the guests. They were always curious about you. But, I didn't even really have any buzzers left or lights to light up. And even when I did, it was good for a one-time surprise. For a first-time audience or a child or, people looking for a thrill. But I didn't have ride ability, except for kids on Ride All You Want Day trying to outride, I'm going to ride it 50 times. Well, I'll ride it 51 times. That was a one-trick pony, I think is what they call it. But you're here, and when you arrived, you didn't really seem to understand any of that or even process it. And I realized you're not a guest from the old world. And you didn't understand what even my scenes were supposed to be, and the difference between the dark side of the moon ride and the all hollow surprise time fun ride they were going to make me into. I wasn't even sure if you knew what the dark side of the moon even meant or even referenced, or where it originated or how it changed from the 50s in the remnants that remained, and then with the album that was introduced in my psychedelic tunnel. Some kids at my heyday, they would ride and re-ride as they smoked or laughed and giggled and pointed and cracked up or stared slack-jawed. And I knew what they were up to. A lot of them worked at the park. But it's confusing even to me. Why are we still here? Just for you, there's no offense. I was asking myself that question when I was a classic ride. And then when I was closed for maintenance or whatever they said. And I wish I could explain to you, to sit with you, to use words, to say what it looked like. When it did, I could see sometimes what the kids were laughing at when they tried to mesh two different things together. It never made any sense, but none of them cared because they couldn't see the curtains and the simplicity that you saw when you arrived, the emptiness, really. And I remember your first walkthrough, balancing on the rails with your ninja balance and your ninja jumps, or whatever you brought from your time in that mountainous ride. But I also remember the curious, confused look in your eye as the daylight streamed through my holes and the little different families of birds and friendly forest mammals curled up in their nests in the corners. And then when you finally switched on the mechanics and put me in operation, or the car's in operation, and you rode up my small lift hill and out the door for a little peek outside, which was always a way they made people say, hey, come ride the ride. Those people up there, they're on the second floor outside that school. They're having fun. And I know you just looked, and then that's when my little tiny descent hill came and picked up momentum. And then you went through my 2 sets of doors that for some reason the caretaker had made sure were made with new wood or rebuilt, repaired. Even though the old faded panels, he still kept on there. And then you were in the dark ride, which was a bit silly for both of us because it wasn't dark in there. Even that day, it was a little bit cloudy. But you just looked on at some tattered curtains and, some chicken wire and faded wood boxes, empty light bulbs and mechanical sound effects, long since missing parts or rusted stock. And you seemed a bit perplexed. But then you went to work, sweeping and basic maintenance, and you put on some gloves, which was surprising. I said, what did they teach you? Where did they teach you to wear those gloves? In the Ninja Adventures? And you moved the birds' nests and the piles of twigs and paper and all the little things, and you gently moved it all out and underneath the ride where they could relocate, I guess, in your opinion, and you cleaned and you washed and you patched my floor. My floor was never strong enough. I never had the foundation for Realtronics, only lightweight paper mache or rubber on chicken wire. And then it rained for a few days, and since you were living with me, you went to work on the roof as soon as the rain passed. Looking at the other classic rides roofs, I said, well, she's no roofer. Wonder why the caretaker's not doing anything. But you seem to figure it out with the tin and the plastic roofs on the other rides, and you requisitioned some from different stands, and you worked hard, not only making me waterproof, but soon you found it did make me a little bit darker inside, and then you installed a few light bulbs, and I guess the caretaker had rewired things because the light bulbs worked. And somehow you found pictures of the ride somewhere in the maintenance area. You were really, I guess you'd never chewed gum before, because my gum wall on the lift hill where the ride would go up to the second floor, all along that for decades and decades, children and teens and adults and grandparents would press to their gum against me. And it kind of made sense because their gum was against the backdrop of a lift hill for a rocket into space, which was the theme of my ride. And each piece of gum was like a star in the sky. And, when they maintained the ride, they painted around the gum or painted over it and then painted it white. And you figured that out and you started to work on that. And there was a lot of day glow colors, which I don't know if you had seen before, punctuating the night sky and the white stars. Was the day glow neon of, a moon launch pad on an advanced Earth that never ended up existing except in the minds of the people at the Pretzel Design Corporation. But you worked on my lift hill and made these day glow rocket blasts as we got towards and you colored in the numbers. I don't even know if you knew what 10 and 9, 8, 7, 6, any of those things even meant. And then you figured out how the theming went as you went outside, that you were launched off, but that somehow, and this part was never clear to almost any guess, is that the descent hill was where you were supposed to touch down, because we didn't have audio. They did put it in occasionally, but it was mostly they were using the copyrighted music from the band, and most of the time, I think they might have used something not even from a Pink Floyd song. And then they would get shut down. But that was supposed to be the transition where your rocket was supposed to land on the light side of the moon. But then in the descent, because the first set of doors looked like a blast, and then the second set of doors was supposed to look like a crater, a day-glow crater, that you had crashed on the dark side of the moon. And you went along with it week after week, painting and progressing down the lift hill. And I said, this is a refurbishment I've always dreamed of. But again, the other side of me said, why? Maybe you're going to be a good painter. How does that help you in our current circumstances at all? If I could have spoke, I would have told the caretaker to just take you back to the Ninja Adventures, or, the wilderness, like a campfire thing. I don't even know what those rides were on the western end of the park, but we could learn some real skills. Nobody's going to be painting a ride anymore, but you were focused, and you even worked on the gantry mural and all that on the front of the ride for a while, and you did your best. I guess you were good at painting. I don't know. I guess I care about you, but I don't think you're going to be a space artist. But you got the point of the ride. And then you started to work on the other parts of the beginning of the ride, the sound effects, like the klaxon horn. That was when you first swung around the corner from the lift hill outside. And then when you go through the second set of doors, it was just a box with ball bearings that would tilt and tilt back to make a sound effect. And there's a little bump in the track to say, oh no, I've landed on the dark side of the moon. If I'd ever gotten a full redesign, I guess it would have to have been a different ride, but you seemed to believe in the story, I guess, or maybe I just was over-investing in how dedicated you were. And then you worked on the first turn right, which was supposed to be a view around, like with all these craters, paper mache craters, which somehow you learned to do, and all those supplies, I guess, had been kept, and you even worked on the mechanics and even parts of the little moon persons that were supposed to pop out of the craters and surprise you on the ride. And it was cute. It was really funny to see them. Not all of them would pop up. And they were supposed to turn their lights on and off, and you started to look for the lights. And it was weird that my ride had a mix of, because of the Pink Floyd side of the dark side of the moon, the fluorescence and the incandescence. But you found some of the screw-in light bulbs that were supposed to light up the little moon people. And then it was a weird strobe, and that's when things started, then above the car, we had a cawing bird sound effect and a strobe that revealed a giant moonbird flying at the ride. And then another turn to the left where another moonbird was saying, here's my beak. I'm going to try to, and you worked on all of that. And then a turn back the other way. And there was a weird waterfall effect that wasn't working. And I think originally way it was lit, it was supposed to be moon lava, even though it was just water lit. And with the effect of, I think it was plastic underneath. That one you left it perplexed you. And then another turn to the side. It was a little box it was supposed to have 3 little eggs in it. It took you a while to figure that one out, but you figured it out from the pictures, and that the eggs would poke up and it'd be little moonbird babies. And instead of a quick, it was just a bell, ding, 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 ding. And that they were supposed to have moon eyes, but they were also kind of supposed to put you at ease. Because then when you turned back, it was like a furry purple moon bear, I think we didn't call it that, but I think that's what I would call it now. And there was some fur left, and you were able to salvage some other fur. It didn't look the same. It looked very snuggable when in purple. And that would crack people up because it looked like it was smiling, and it had a horn with a psychedelic painting on it. But you worked on that for a while, and you made the best of that. And then you're supposed to turn back again, and we had hanging in the original ride. It was all hanging from string and rubber bands, and even some that would swing back and forth. But this was always a debate with the ride at the park. It was because people were always trying to grab. These weren't moon birds, but they were kind of moon pests flying around and bugging you. And there was right after that, there was just a symbol. And then you went into a part of the ride where then there was dark, and then there was a vibrating part that made your car vibrate. And then there was a special effect, which was kind of the best on the ride, which was supposed to be a waving space person saying, hey, over here, I know that weird stuff just happened, but I'm a space person over here. And it was just wood, but it was brilliantly designed that then the light would go out, and then the spaceman it was a flat piece of 2-dimensional wood. And then it would turn around, and then you would see that it was not a space person, or it was a space person, but they weren't, it looked like originally one of your astronaut friends, but when it flipped, it was clearly not an astronaut friend. And you painted all that, and then that was it for the ride. The rest had been pulled out permanently, and I don't know, tossed away. And you worked so hard, and then you got obsessed with making the ride dark as possible. And then you stumbled on the black lights, and you must have been digging as you're through one of the old storage containers, looking for more supplies, probably for more fur for the moon bear. But when you found those black lights, then you really got into making that ride as dark as possible. And you were mesmerized. And once you got it really dark, you would ride in there, and you kind of looked like some of those kids in the 70s and the 80s, their eyes beady and red or wide and red. I can never remember. I think some were one and some were the other. Drooling and giggling and pointing and saying ridiculous things. And that's when you finally made sense at the end of the ride, the psychedelic tunnel. You said, oh, okay. And the caretaker had been working on the mechanics of that, so all you needed to do was start it up, and it started to spin, and with the black lights installed, and you got it without, it still held up some of its strange, the way it would spin as the car went through, and you repainted it, and it was out there, man, as the kids used to say back then. And then I watched you and how you would watch the different moon things. And then at night you would sit out and look at the real moon. And I guess I didn't really put a meaning to what you were doing until later. In my second half, other than the tunnel remained empty, and you'd have to occasionally move out the birds and the mammals and put them back underneath the ride, and you're always patient and kind with that. But you would stare at the moon, and then you would work on the moon that was on the front of the ride. They had both a realistic painting you had worked on, and then a silly winking moon, half light, half dark, which was a stolen image from a movie with space, the rocket in its winking eye. But you seemed entranced, and at some point you started poking holes in the ride, in the roof, on my empty side, the side you weren't living on anymore anyway. And then sitting in there during the day, everything you'd made super dark, so I wondered why. And then you started working on the roof and replacing tin with plastic and putting clear plastic or faded plastic and playing with some of the mirror effects. I don't know if you learned that in the Teenage Ninja Ride or where, but Ian is sitting in there during the day and sitting in there during the night and in the full moon and on cloudy days and writing things down and marking the floor and riding the ride over and over again. And it was mysterious to me what you were doing. And then I saw you looking at the motor that ran the whole ride and finding a setting that moved it down to a much slower speed. And I don't know, at some point it also clicked for me when you would work in the darkness of the ride and you would come out into the light of the day and you would just lie there basking in the full sunlight. And I said, wait a second, is this some sort of dark side of the moon, light side of the moon thing you're doing? But you seemed like you took the strange premise and took it even further. For you simply took my darkness and the light and the way the light changes from day to night and in the way you could just see some light in the distance and not know how far it is or where it is or is that even light. And at this point, the ride was moving so slow in super maintenance mode. It almost a crawl, a chug. And you would sit there, and I knew you were seeing beyond what was there just because of the lack of light and then the few pinpricks of light, or on a cloudy day, the way the light would constantly be changing, or where the sun was in the sky, how it could only be let in. I don't know. I didn't even understand what you did with the mirrors and things, but I was like, she's looking not at the ride, but at something beyond. I assumed is something into your dreams. Your eyes were wide open, looking at these tiny points of light, and the way you would paint them, and sometimes you'd be in there viewing whatever it was, your dreams or your imagination, and I'd see you flinch, or I'd see you laugh, or I'd see you reach out, and I was mesmerized, I guess, too. And, for a while you kept designing and testing out painting and things, but then the storm came through. And we couldn't have expected that, but it took the whole roof right off of me, and you huddled there in one of the cars underneath the lift hill. And then finally you had to crawl underneath and shelter with all the little mammal friends down there. And you saw all their little nests underneath the ride. You saw their eyes in the light of the storm. But the storm passed, and you surveyed what had happened. My roof was gone. Your imaginary playland, it would take a long time, I guess, to rebuild that. And a lot of the dark side of the moon stuff, the paintings remained, but a lot of the paper mache, it was not lost, but all your painting and forming little bird heads and those things and little craters, it wasn't the same. The psychedelic tunnel was fine because it was, it was a tunnel. You probably could have stayed in there for the storm. And you looked over everything, and then you went back to work on the roof, fixing it and reinforcing it instead of designing it. And you kind of seemed a little bit furious, both with yourself and with the roof and with the storm, maybe even with me, for the roof blowing away. But you seem to have a different intention anyway. You're hammering and you're screwing, and you used everything on that roof, duct tape, and you got it really secure. And once you felt like it was almost airtight, I said, what's she going to do now? What is the next, what's going to happen here? Then you started setting out your food and hiding and waiting for the mammals to return and the birds to return and leading them to nest in the paper mache craters and in the heads of paper mache birds, which is funny to me. Birds nesting in baby bird eggs, from the dark side of the moon, and you let the animals reclaim the ride, and you painted over the paper mache that was left, because they had gotten kind of used to you. Well, you didn't overfeed them, you just used it to lure them, so they still had to forage on their own. And the mammals kind of took their place back there. And then you went to work on the waterfall of all things. And you finally, I don't think you ever could figure out the effect that made it look like red lava. But you figured out how to hook it up to one of the cisterns that held the rainwater, and how to turn it on, and then you found a water pump. And I think you knew if you left it out, the caretaker would do that type of repair. You got the water pump moving, and it created a little waterfall loop with the cistern, and soon the mammals were checking it out and playing in the pool at the bottom of the waterfall. It was a, bird and little mammal bath that they would jump in and jump out of, and then you kind of created some more divots inside me. On my floor, it was already metal anyway, and it had some divots. Created a couple more little water places for water to pool. But also to drain back out. I said, where'd she learn this? Putting a hole in my bottom and a bigger hole in my top. So when it rained, these little ponds would fill up, but they wouldn't always be stagnant. And then you moved any things into my vacant side too. Not as designed, but placed, so that more forest friends could go in there. And then it was funny, you had a failed attempt. I think after being under me and seeing, you wanted to try to train the animals to go and use the cars as restrooms, because you found the trick where if you removed the pretzel, the ride would tilt right after the hill. And you said, oh, that's like some sort of self-cleaning animal bathroom. But none of them ever took you up on that offer. I think the rumbling and the rambling of the ride, they would tolerate it when the ride rambled through. And then you would ride through slowly and watch them. They didn't catch your attention quite like the work did. And you made a few more tweaks and made sure that there was no easy way for anything bigger than a small mammal to get in the ride. I watched you do that. They said, where did she know this about, other friends that wander the park, that see our little mammal friends as little morsels. You made it so they couldn't really get into the ride, but the little mammal friends could, and our little birds could fly in through some holes in the top side. And I watched as you, at some point you knew that you were done, and I didn't realize it, but that you had refilled me in some sense, that I wasn't empty, and I guess I never really was. I was just kind of down on the fact that, I guess because it was I was in an unintentional habitat, but now that you had kind of tweaked it and given the animals freedom to, whatever burrow where they wished, I was there. I guess I had a purpose, and I don't know if I did any service to you. I mean, I would hope that maybe it was that steely look in your eye, where you were focused on the task at hand, and you seemed to be both working and taking pleasure at the same time, and recrafting me, rebuilding me, and that carries you somewhere. And I would hope that you feel some cheese inside, or whatever you wish to call it, like I do now, that by helping me host these friends. That helps you host to something inside of you, too, that you're not just hard on the outside like a teenage ninja. Because I don't even think you're a teenager yet. But I knew it was time for you to go, and you walked around and walked the track and balanced it again. You stood in the psychedelic tunnel, and then you lied down and stayed there for most of the day. And I guess you were called on to somewhere else. But I wanted you to remember that you helped me, and ideally I helped you. And, mammals and birds don't thank people, guests or hosts, but I know they're happy now. So I hope you come visit someday and just check in. I know you have. You try to act like you're just walking by. But thank you.